Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. We're back with another like fitness focused video. I feel like I've not done one of these in so long. It's honestly just been like lifestyle-y, days in the life and everything like that. And although I do love filming those, I do also want my channel to be fitness based and just really helpful for you guys, because I feel like on my other social platforms like Instagram and TikTok and stuff, I can only go into so much depth fitness wise, so I really like to use YouTube to kind of go into more depth and be more informative and yeah, just hopefully give you guys as much information as possible to help you on your fitness journey basically. And today we are back with another glute growth workout focused video, basically everything about your bum. Now this kind of format, this video is going to be filmed in a little bit of a different way. I usually either do like a glute workout with a voiceover over the top explaining what I'm doing, and then like explaining kind of like how to grow your glutes in a completely separate video, but I'm gonna just put it all into one video and I'm gonna show you guys my current favorite glute workout, like literally my holy grail glute workout that includes every single movement that you need to grow your glutes, and just kind of talk about it in a lot of depth and also just give you guys my top tips on how to actually grow your glutes without overcomplicating things, because I feel like there's so much information on like social media nowadays that a lot of it is just like very overcomplicated, and I feel like people get really confused really easily because there's just so much information out there. There's people saying you should do this, and then there's other people saying no, you should do this instead, blah de blah de blah. But I'm here to simplify it for you as much as possible, and it's honestly not that complicated at all. Like the way to grow your glutes or just any part of your body really, just to build muscle in general, it is generally very simple. Like the concept and the things that you actually need to be doing are very simple. Not saying that it's easy, but it's very simple, and I feel like a lot of people produce like quite a lot of unnecessary content and information that is just like, you just don't really need it. So I'm just gonna try and simplify it as much as possible, and I hope that it's helpful. So the tips that I'm going to be telling you are basically what has worked for me personally. So I have managed to grow my glutes a fair bit throughout my fitness journey. I've been training for around 5 or 6 years now, and I will put up a progress picture of my glutes. I've never had like a very small bum, but I did have a small bum, and I have managed to grow them throughout weight training and things, which I am forever grateful for because it's honestly done me wonders. And I'm just basically going to share my tips with you on how I have done that. Literally just in the past year, I have seen the most glute growth I've ever seen throughout my fitness journey, just by sticking to these points that I'm going to be telling you about and actually doing these things. So the first tip and like point that I have, which in my opinion is the most important one, because it's basically very difficult to grow substantially without doing this, and that would be to eat in a calorie surplus. So that means eating more calories than you're burning, and that is essentially what a lot of people online call a bulk. And I stuck to my basically my first like proper bulk last October, and I finished it around this March-April time. And I'll put up some progress like check-in pictures here from the start of my bulk to the end of my bulk on like what my physique looked like. And honestly, I've never seen so much growth in my life, like within my body. My body has changed so much just from that one bulk, and staying consistent and sticking to that bulk consistently and hitting the calories that, you know, like I set for myself during that bulk. That is the most growth that I have ever seen within my body, also my glutes and everything. And yeah, that would be the main piece of advice that I would give to anyone if you are really wanting to grow. I know this video is about glutes, but this goes for any body part that you want to grow. If you really want to grow substantially a part of your body, or just like your whole body in general, I would highly recommend going into a calorie surplus. Yes, you can build muscle at maintenance, but you're not going to be able to build a substantial amount of muscle. It depends how much muscle you want to build. Obviously everyone's goals and everything are completely different. This just goes for people that maybe want to build a lot of muscle. I would say that you can't really do that without going in a calorie surplus. So that would be my main piece of advice, because that is what has personally just completely changed my physique. I'm not going to go into like calories and stuff and like what calories I was eating and everything, just because I feel like that is very subjective and it's also very personal to the person. Like, there's no point me saying my calories because it doesn't help any of you guys, because you will not be on the same calories as me. But I do get asked a lot like how to work out maintenance calories and stuff, and you can literally just go online and search like maintenance calorie calculator, and like you type in your body weight and everything like that, and it should give you your maintenance calories. And then the biggest piece of advice I would give to someone going into a bulk is to be patient and take your time with it. The main thing that you want to achieve out of the bulk is sustainability, because if you are on, say, a certain amount of calories and then you just suddenly increase them to like by 1,000 on the first day of your bulk, because you're like, right, I'm doing this, I'm going straight into this bulk full on, it's highly unlikely that you're not going to be able to sustain that level of volume like per day eating wise. So I would highly recommend keeping it as sustainable as possible. Gradually increase your calories as you go along, and a bulk isn't like a 2-week thing, it's weeks and months. I bulked for 6 or 7 months. Yeah, I bulked for a substantial amount of time. I think the problem with a lot of people these days is that people just think that you can get results within a couple of weeks, or people just want to get results in a couple of weeks. Obviously that's completely normal, everybody just wants to get results like that, it's just in human nature. But I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. Whether you are in a calorie surplus, in a calorie deficit, or you're just maintaining or anything and you're just trying to make progress, it is a monthly long process. It's monthly, yearly. Like, this has taken me around 5 or 6 years for my transformation that I put on the screen before. So just please remember that, and please just be patient with your journey and just try and enjoy the journey that you're on, rather than just trying to reach the end goal as quick as possible, because you're just not going to enjoy it that way. It's not going to be sustainable. You need to actually enjoy the journey that you're on and just try and make it as enjoyable for yourself as possible. So the next point that I have is basically to do with the structure of your glute workouts, which is super important, and I feel like it's quite overlooked in the industry, and a lot of the time people just try and do these Instagrammable workouts that maybe are not actually beneficial, and they are not actually getting you the results that you want. So I say this in every single like glute workout video, how to grow your glutes and everything like that, but I'm going to tell you how I structure my glute workouts and how I structure them to get the most out of my workouts, and just how I've made the most progress from structuring my workouts in this way. So I always start with compound movements. So a compound movement is a movement that works more than one muscle at a time. It's your big lifts that require lots of energy. It's your lifts that maybe people want to focus more on progressive overloading, for example deadlifts, hip thrusts, squats, everything like that. That, yeah, as I said, is usually the movements that people really want to focus on increasing numbers within, and they just require the most energy because, as I said, they work more than one muscle at a time. So I always say and recommend to people to do these right at the start of your workouts. I would never recommend to anyone to do these at the ends of your workouts, especially if you want to put more focus in these movements, which a lot of people do. You want to keep them at the start, because if you have already done your other movements before that, your energy levels are going to be so much more depleted, and you're not going to be able to progressively overload within those lifts and progress in those lifts week by week. So compounds at the start always. I usually tend to do 2 compound lifts in all of my glutes and hamstrings workouts. I may do the odd third one, but 90% of the time it's just 2 compound movements, and that is RDLs and hip thrusts. I'm going to be putting the workout on the screen so you guys will be able to see. I'm going to talk you through the structure of this workout as you can actually see it. So in this workout I started off with Romanian deadlifts, which is RDLs, and this is a compound lift. As I said, it requires lots of energy, and it's a movement, personally with me anyway, that I like to progressively overload within week by week, whether that be increasing the weight, increasing the rep range, increasing frequency, any sort of form of progressive overload I like to include within this movement. So I do like to keep that right at the start. Here I'm doing 3 sets of 12 12 reps. I've also been finding that keeping in the 3-set rep range is more beneficial for me, especially in the compound and unilateral exercises. I then also like to go into the 2-set rep range when I do my isolation movements. I just find that's been really working for me lately, and it helps prevent any unnecessary exhaustion to the muscles that maybe wouldn't allow me to carry on with the rest of the workout. It allows me to still sustain my energy levels throughout the workout without being too depleted to finish the workout, which sometimes doing 4 sets of every single exercise can cause that. It can cause you to feel a little bit depleted, and doing 4 sets of every single exercise is not really necessary, and I also don't think it is the most beneficial because you're just going to overtire your muscles. With Romanian deadlifts, the way that I get the best glute connection in these is to have a slight bend in my knee, keep the barbell as close as possible to your legs. You don't want to be having the barbell further out, you want to have it literally touching your legs all the way up and down. You want to keep a neutral spine, and you want to keep your head facing pretty downwards towards the floor. You want to keep the movement slow and controlled, and when you go down, you want to go down just below the knee length. That is what I find works personally for me. However, obviously everybody is different heights and everything like that. I am quite short. Just do not want to be going all the way down to the floor, like all the way down to your feet. It's not really beneficial. You don't really need to be doing that, and I actually find that that engages my hamstrings a lot more than my glutes when I start going really far down in an RDL. So if you want to get the best glute connection, I would go just past knee length, and you do not want to hyperextend the glutes when you get to the top of the movement. So a lot of the time you might see someone going down on an RDL and then coming back up, and they squeeze their glutes all the way back in. You do not need to be doing that. All you want to do is just keep constant tension within your glutes. That does not mean hyperextending them. Hyperextending your glutes can cause a lot of back issues and really just heighten your chances of getting a back injury, so you want to avoid that as much as possible. As you can see, I'm just keeping the movement really strict and just really controlled. This is how I personally find that I get the best glute connection with this movement. As you can see, my arms and my hands and my wrists and everything are super close to my body. I'm not letting the weight fly in front of me or anything. I'm keeping the movement super strict. Next up for this workout, I went into barbell hip thrust. So that is our second compound movement of the workout. This is also a movement that I like to progressively overload within each week, and obviously, as I said, it is a compound movement, so it requires high energy levels, and you do not want to be depleted before you do this exercise as well. And for this, I did 3 sets of 12 reps again. I usually don't like to do 12 reps too often, just because it obviously is quite a high volume of repetitions. However, I was doing the weights that I did the previous week, which I actually did for 8 to 10 reps. So that is actually a form of progressive overload that I can show you as an example. These exact weights that I was doing last week, I was doing 8 to 10 reps, and this week I am doing 12 reps. So now that I can do 12 reps of that weight, that is a clear indicator to me for next week to increase the weight a little bit again, and then aim for 8 to 10 reps once again. That is basically what progressive overload is. And for hip thrust, the way that I kind of get the best glute connection within this movement, the most important tip that I would give is to keep your chin and your head tucked into your chest. You don't want your head looking up at the ceiling or anything, or, you know, rolling back onto the bench. You don't want anything like that. Again, you want to keep this movement super strict. You don't want to be flailing about everywhere and just kind of swinging the movement about. You want to keep it super controlled, and you want to take as much movement away from the upper body as possible and focus it most, if not all of it, in your glutes. So by this I mean scoop just your glutes under and try and restrict as much movement as possible within your upper body. You want to keep this whole movement powered and controlled by your lower body instead of your upper body. And then the next kind of movement that I go into in my glutes and hamstrings days are my unilateral movements. So these are your single leg movements, and these are super important to include in any leg days that you do and upper body days and everything. But unilateral movements just really help to prevent any imbalances in either side of your body, and they really just put a lot of focus on one side of your body at once. But in this instance, it puts a lot of pressure and a lot of muscular contraction on one side of your body rather than both at once. So it's really important to just include those movements that just put a lot of focus on one side at once. And my personal current favourite for glutes at the moment is cable step-ups. However, some other unilateral examples would be lunges, lunges and also split squats. But personally I find with the cables, I don't know what it is about the cables, I think it's just because you feel so supported, because obviously for one you're not trying to like balance yourself like a lot of the time you maybe are with like dumbbell split squats or barbell split squats. A lot of the time you're trying to focus on your balance rather than actually focusing on the movement and the muscle that you are trying to connect with and contract with. So I feel like with the cables, because it's super supported, you know that you're not going to lose your balance or anything, I find that I can put a lot more mind to muscle connection and focus on the actual muscle that I'm trying to work, which is my glutes. So with this I did 2 sets of 10 reps, and as you can see I'm keeping the movement super slow and controlled, and I'm only just very lightly tapping that foot that's going down off the floor. I'm not pushing up from that foot so drastically. I'm trying to keep the focus on the glute that is on the side of the foot that's on the bench rather than the one that's going down to the floor. So you want to keep as much pressure and focus off of that foot that's going down as possible, and just very lightly touch it off the floor. Find that also leaning my body forward and my head forward to face more so the floor, as you can see here, really better helps me get a connection within my glutes as well. And just hinging a little bit more in that movement just obviously allows me to just get a better glute connection. A big taker that I would take from this video is also that every single body is different. A lot of people have longer legs than me, or even shorter legs than me, or just completely different bodies. So I feel like the main important thing for you to take away from this video is to work out what works best for you and your body. So just try different things, try different ways of doing each movement, and you will click with a certain kind of form of a way of doing something. Don't just think that because somebody else does something one way you have to do it that way, even if you maybe don't reap the rewards of it and you don't feel it like somebody else does. That's absolutely fine. You just need to put some time and effort into just working out what works for your body personally to just get the most out of your workouts basically. But as you can see as well, the bench that I'm using is not too high, but I'm only 5'2", so my legs are quite short. However, as I said, everybody's heights and everything are different, so everybody would need some kind of different level of elevation. But as I said, just trial different ones and see which works best for you. And I usually only like to keep one unilateral movement in my glute workouts, just because obviously they are single legs, so they do tend to take longer. That is just basically the main reason why I only do one unilateral movement, because I just think it's also a bit unnecessary to do two. You know, you've already done 2 compound movements, you've done 1 unilateral movement, you still need your isolation movements to go. So I think that adding another unilateral movement is a little bit unnecessary. Yeah, I recommend 1 unilateral movement. That just works for me personally. And then lastly, we've still got our isolation movements to go. So that is the movements that solely work more or less one muscle at a time. They just put a lot of focus on one muscle at a time. It's usually the muscles that you hear people talk about the burn, and you really just feel the burn at the end of your workouts. It's just a really good way to finish off your workouts in my opinion, and they don't require as much energy as compounds and unilaterals, which is why I recommend doing them at the end. It's also the kind of movements that I would personally focus more so on volume rather than trying to load a lot of weight onto it. For example, as you can see, I next went into cable kickbacks, and this is just personally for me not a movement that I would be trying to load a lot of weight onto, maybe do 4 to 6 reps. It's more so a movement that I would put a moderate to lighter weight on and try and do 10 to 12 reps just to really reap the rewards of that movement more so, and just really achieve that kind of burn sensation that people talk about at the end of your workouts. And it's just a really good way to finish off your workout. And with the kickbacks, I personally find that leaning my body forward, again as you can see, leaning my body and my head forward more towards the floor and hinging really just helps me get a better glute connection and keeping the movement really slow and controlled. I'm not like flinging the weight back really quickly or anything, and I'm also not lifting my leg up at the back higher than it needs to be lifted. That is the perfect point for me where I kind of feel my glutes and I get mind to muscle connection within my glutes. I know that there's a lot of different ways that you can perform this exercise, and there's a lot of different ways that people kind of talk about how to perform this exercise online, but that is just personally how I perform the exercise and how I feel my glutes within that exercise. But as I said, you can just try kind of different forms and different methods of that one exercise and just see which one responds the best to your body. And then this is a glutes and hamstrings workout, so we're not just focusing on the glutes, we're also focusing on the hamstrings. So the last exercise that I went into was lying leg curl. I did 2 sets of 10 reps, and this was my hamstring isolation movement of the day. This is just a holy grail of mine. I really just tend to not overcomplicate things when it comes to hamstrings especially. I just think the basics just honestly work the best. You don't need to be doing any of these unnecessary exercises or anything, and I find that the hamstring curl just never fails me at the end of my session. Like, I think hamstring pain is honestly one of the worst pains ever that you can walk out of the gym feeling. Honestly, my clutch control on the way home, non-existent. But again, you want to keep this movement super slow and controlled, and you want to try and keep your hips glued to that chair as much as possible. You don't want to be lifting your bum up into the air or anything. If you find yourself doing that, then just lower the weight. Don't let your ego get the better of you, and just focus the movement with intent and with control. And that is it for the workout part of this video, and kind of my advice on how to structure a glute workout. So yeah, those are my first 2 points, the very long-winded points that are my 2 holy grails basically. And then I've got 3 more points that I also think are super important and should be taken on board if you guys are actually serious about growing your glutes. My next point would be to stay consistent. This is so overlooked, and people think that, you know, yeah, you've got to stay in a surplus, you've got to do these workouts in a certain way, eat high protein and everything like that, and that is all well and good, but if you are not doing it consistently, you are not going to be reaping the rewards of the things that you are doing. The only way that you are going to be able to see some real progress and actually transform your body is by staying consistent with all of the points that I'm going to be telling you. Consistency is so important, and this is why I tell you guys to be patient with your journey and just try and enjoy the journey, because I feel like if you don't enjoy it, you're just kind of striving for the end goal. It's way harder to stay consistent with it, and it's just way harder to enjoy the process that you are on. So staying consistent is super important. That's why it's so important to build up discipline and also build up healthy habits over time that can help you stay consistent. And then next would be to have a high protein diet. Now this is obviously a super obvious point that everybody knows this. When you're trying to build muscle, you need to have a high protein diet, and I'm gonna say it again, that it's super important, and I feel like that is also overlooked, because yes, you can be in a surplus, you can be eating more calories than you are burning, and you can be kind of gaining weight per se. However, if you are not eating a high protein diet, it's going to be way harder for you to see actual muscle gain. You are more likely to see more fat gain than muscle gain if you are not eating enough protein and you are kind of still in a surplus, for example. A high protein diet is super important. Like, protein literally repairs and maintains muscle tissue. So if you do not have an adequate amount of protein within your body on a daily basis, you are not going to be able to build as much muscle tissue or even maintain the muscle tissue that you have, for that matter. Proteins are the literal building blocks of your muscles, so it's super important when trying to build muscle that you have a high protein diet, because it's basically going to be impossible, if not very difficult, to build an adequate amount of muscle if you are eating under your protein goal and the recommended like protein intake that you are meant to be having. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the recommended like protein intake for people trying to build muscle is around 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that is like the figure that I have in my head right now, and I don't really know why it's in my head, but I think that is right. And then the last tip that I have for you guys for today's video, sorry I've been blabbing on so much, but the last tip that I have to build and grow your glutes and muscle in general is to push until failure / work harder more often. Now this sounds so like obvious and such like a just an obvious self-explanatory point. However, I feel like so many people like actually do not do their repetitions, their sets or anything with actual intention and with actual difficulty. I see so many people honestly just completing the reps just to complete the reps that they've set themselves, basically. So say for example you've set yourself 10 reps, once they get to that 10 rep mark they just stop, even if they could do way more. And I feel like if you actually want to build a sufficient amount of muscle, you need to stop doing that. You need to actually push yourself past your limits and push yourself harder then you think you can go. If you set yourself 10 reps and you can easily complete those 10 reps, that is an indication to you that you need to up that weight. I'm not saying you need to push until failure every single set, every single exercise of your workout. It doesn't have to be until failure. That last rep or the last couple of reps just need to be very difficult, and so that maybe if you try to complete another couple, you would not be able to complete those. Because in order to build muscle, you actually need to break down muscle tissue in order to rebuild new muscle tissue. And if you are not completing reps with difficulty or anything, and you are not actually finding the reps hard, your muscle tissue is not going to be getting broken down, so you are not going to rebuild new muscle tissue. And I have found that even just over the past few months, like this year, I have started working so much harder, pushing till failure more often, and actually just working harder within my sets, and just making things so difficult for myself. I feel like a lot of the time people are not willing to actually put that much effort into their workouts, and they don't want it to be hard. But I'm telling you right now, your workouts need to be hard. If they're not hard, you're not doing it right, and you're not actually going to make progress. And I think that's a hard truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. But if you are not struggling during your workout, you are not going to be making the progress that you want to make. You need to be struggling, it needs to be difficult, and you need to be pushing with intent in every single workout. You need to have an intention in every single workout, and you just need to push yourself hard. So that is all the points that I have for this video. It's literally not that complicated at all. I'm not saying the process is easy whatsoever. The process of actually putting these words and these tips actually into action is so difficult, and it requires so much self-discipline. And I feel like if you realize that you do all these things and just actually work hard every single day, then you need to be so proud of yourself. But these are super simple in essence. Like, the actual tips that I'm telling you are simple. They are simple tips. It's honestly just getting them down to a T, like nailing them down and actually mastering these tips. That is the hardest part to making progress. But the actual tips that I'm telling you, it's not rocket science. I feel like most people know this stuff that I am telling you, but a lot of the time, as I said at the start of this video, people online try to overcomplicate a lot of things. You see all these crazy workouts that you don't have to be doing. If you enjoy doing things like that, by all means go for it. But if you are someone that is just wanting to build muscle, you don't want things overcomplicated, and you just want to do what works, you just need to follow these tips. And if you stay consistent with all these tips, you should be making the progress that you are wanting to make, and you should be, you know, hitting those goals that you are setting for yourself. But yeah, I hope you guys found this video helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions with regards to anything I've said, and I'll get back to you. And also just let me know if you like these videos and if you want kind of more informative videos more often. But yeah, I hope this was useful, and I will see you guys in next week's video. Bye!